third installment of the Voices of Rondo podcast here at the HSRA studio. We've got two co-hosts today.
My name is Moises. I go to Brooklyn Center High School, and very excited for this episode of the podcast.
Yeah, me too. And we also have a special guest joining us in the studio. Pierre, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yo, what's poppin'? My name is Pierre Fulford, artist, activist, minister, all things community. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. We're so excited to be talking with you. And we are going to take this podcast in a historical direction to start, I think. We're going to start off with some history of discrimination throughout the country, and then focus in on the Rondo neighborhood here. And we're also going to take a look later on at another specific example of a community that was affected by a highway. This one was in Detroit, in the Black Bottom neighborhood. And we're going to bring on another guest to talk a little bit more about his experiences in Detroit and in Rondo. And so, yeah, we're so excited to have you guys here. And it's going to be great.
So we've done research as a youth council on the Bloomberg article. And this article covers the many cities that were affected, including Detroit and St. Paul. And there's other cities, Cincinnati, Miami, Houston.
Yeah, Chattanooga.
Rondo was the first one on there because that really highlights the effect of the highway on here. But we're going to talk about that later. But first, we need to make this parallel and similarity that the massacres that happened in Jim Crow in Tulsa and in Wilmington, the ends were the same. Mm-hmm. Many people were displaced, economic devastation. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so we have been looking at other examples of how African American communities have been displaced, like Moises said, and affected. Yeah. And we've looked at ways that the government has played a role in that, and also that other just individuals or communities have played a role in that. Like white communities have kind of inflicted this violence on African Americans. And so we're going to start off, I think, with the Wilmington Massacre.
Yeah, Wilmington, North Carolina, not Delaware. It was the only coup d'etat that happened in the United States. It was done by a white mob who were upset that the Black population were actually gaining political power because, the majority of the city was African American at that time. So they literally just overthrew the Black government, the Black city government. And many homes were destroyed. I think 60 to 100 people died, and thousands were displaced. And that changed the demographics, forever. Still affects it to this day.
Yeah. And a similar example, which I think most people will have heard of, is the Tulsa Race Riots and the massacre there in 1921, which was a similar phenomenon of this white mob kind of coming into this black neighborhood that was, known as Black Wall Street, this very prosperous neighborhood, and just destroying everything. And basically there was extreme damage. I think up to 300 deaths were reported, and also just the generational loss is, incalculable, really. They said that on the spot, $30 to $45 million of property was destroyed. And then how do you rebuild from that? Well, it's very hard to. And after that, there were attempts to rebuild. And no, it did rebuild. It did, right. It got renewed. It was a revival of the community. There was a revival, and then guess what happened in 1975? What happened? They built a highway. The government funded a highway program to be built right down through the middle of Tulsa. 1975, and they named it the MLK Highway. Because that makes it better. Yeah. So, there's this pattern that's repeating itself. We know here in Rondo, they built this highway down right through the center of Rondo. They did it in Tulsa, too. This is a story that I think I had never heard before. I didn't know that. I didn't know. Tulsa was destroyed twice. Yeah. It was destroyed twice.
I got a question. So they gave the highway a name in Tulsa.
Yes. Martin Luther King Memorial Expressway.
But they didn't give the highway a name in
No,
Rondo.
That's true. They didn't.
That's true. sad.
Yeah.
At least Tulsa got a name.
Right. Yeah. It destroyed the community.
They destroyed the community.
But they get a highway with a name.
With a name.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And then they picked an historical figure, someone that's really near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah. Because I'm sure MLK will like that.
Yeah.
He'll like that highway being
MLK
there.
destroyed our community. That's literally is horrible.
Oh, I think, didn't they have Rondo Avenue running right down beside the highway? And then they renamed it Concordia Avenue after they built the highway through. So it's Concordia, like everything's like harmonious and going great.
Yeah.
After they like built the highway down. So it's like they named it. They've got their issues with the
Who's
name.
behind these names? They're a great person.
Yeah. They're very creative with their names. Yeah. So I think in 2021, Tulsa received a grant of $1 billion in reconnecting.
This was like, I think, the federal program that was passed under the administration, the presidential administration, to help reconnect communities. And it was going to be distributed, and it was, throughout the country.
What year was that again?
That was 2021, I think. This was, yeah.
So now they're finally feeling bad.
Yeah, they say it.
A little bit.
At least they're, yeah, exactly.
After 50 years.
That's what they say.
Yeah. Who's president then?
That's Biden.
Yeah, Biden. Yeah, Biden's still president.
He's still the guy? Okay.
Yeah, no, he's still going.
Okay, we're good.
But,
and so, one of these neighborhoods was Tulsa. And there are places across the country that obviously want to deal with these highways and want them out, basically.
Yeah.
Or want to re-envision what they can do around the highways and reconnect the communities. And this is exactly what is going on here in Rondo with the land bridge and the entire Reconnect Rondo organization trying to build this African-American cultural enterprise district and reconnect the community.
So, Pierre, what do you think about the Reconnect Rondo project?
I think it's needed, right? I think we got to make some attempt at reconnection. Long overdue, maybe.
Yeah,
even.
about like what, 60 years, I think?
A lot of decades, just some decades, that's all.
Yeah.
So I'm glad there is an effort in the right direction to reconcile a very devastating reality. So yeah, I think it's overdue, decades in the making, but at least there's an attempt in the right direction.
We're talking about these cities, right? And like these highways going through them. But why were these highways built? Like, what made this legal? Because like what we talked about with the Wilmington Massacre, the Tulsa Massacre, that was illegal, right? That was murder,
right? Property damage,
but
a lot of property damage.
A lot of like millions of dollars.
Somebody got paid.
Somebody, yeah. But so why were these highways built?
Right, because the highways were legal, and there was a federal act passed, I think, in 1956.
Yeah, the National Interstate and Defense Highways Act.
Right.
It was championed by the president at the time, Eisenhower. He wanted to connect cities across the nation so it can, cut times and all that.
Something about this act is it was passed unanimously.
By both chambers of Congress. We don't see that nowadays, right? But
Oh no, we don't. So they knew what their priorities were.
Yeah.
Build these highways.
Yes.
Right. Where do they end up going through? I mean, places like Rondo.
Now, a cool fun fact: Eisenhower, was a big champion of this. He was troubled. He was troubled by the highways going through
conscience.
Urban areas because he wanted them to go around them, like little rings. But he was troubled by the cost of building them into urban areas.
Of course.
So not the
effects.
Not the effects.
He was troubled by the cost.
The cost.
Yeah, he didn't mention anything about the effects on the people.
Yeah, man.
Which he has his priorities right.
Yeah. What a guy.
Yeah, and this caused suburbanization and urban renewal, and we have a video called "The Road to Prosperity" because when the highways were being built, there was a promotional campaign being done by the government to promote these. So we have a clip of that, and here it is.
I think that the urban renewal program possibly was prompted partially because of the interstate system.
Urban renewal prompted because of the interstate system. Mr. Edwards was, of course, speaking about Kansas City. But the same thing could be said for almost every city and town in our country. The masses of earth, steel, and concrete that are being moved and molded to build the interstate system are setting up waves of movement in all our urban areas. New jobs for the construction workers, increased production for industries that supply them, tenement neighborhoods and blighted commercial districts replaced by modern communities, all bringing a new face to the American cityscape. The new highways, with access ramps, connecting loops, and feeder streets, are being integrated into total transportation plans for urban areas. It is happening in Hartford and Chicago, Minneapolis and San Francisco, Kansas City and New York City. Where the roads go, new buildings follow. In Chicago, tenements are being replaced by modern low-cost apartments on land adjacent to high-speed freeways. In New York City...
All right, so that was the video.
Yeah, we know that there were a lot of lies in there.
Yeah.
At least some propaganda going on.
I mean, they said urban renewal.
Yeah.
They mentioned it, but they did it like in the positive sense, but they didn't actually talk about the actual effects.
So, yeah, we know that the Rondo neighborhood right here was directly affected by this whole program of urban renewal and driving highways through communities, Black communities and communities of color across the country. And so here in Rondo that, we've talked about in the past, the devastating effects that's had and the attempts to kind of rebuild and looking to the future, what can we do? And Pierre, you've been a resident of Rondo. You've lived here. I mean, you grew up here. You weren't here when the highway was built, right?
No, I was not born yet.
But you felt the effects. And what is it like to have a highway right kind of in the middle of this neighborhood?
Yeah. When you're a kid, it's like, oh, that's the freeway. Like, that's the freeway.
It's just there.
Right,
It's
just there. Yeah.
You grow up and get more information. Like, oh, that's a no way. Like, that's a slave way. That's a
Not a
way. That's not a freeway. That's a way to displace family members. That's a way to destroy a community. That's a way to gentrify.
Right.
I might want to go slow. Than I used to.
Not zoom.
Maybe this interstate thing is not as great as it seems, right? So when you're young, you don't have the information. It's just a part of life. And I think that's one of the biggest impacts that it's had on my generation is that displacement was normalized. This gentrification, this urban renewal, these things are normalized. Oh, this is just life. But for my parents and for my parents' parents and their parents, what we experienced as normalized, very traumatic. Because my grandmother experienced a Rondo that was very connected. She came from Money, Mississippi with her family. And they were very integrated in the community. And so when there was this construction of the freeway, there was a deconstruction of integration. And the community is still trying to, when you see that, then you can see why the community is still splintered in a sense and in a way, why things just don't feel like you think they could or they should feel. And because when there's an intentional, and I'm a very spiritual person, when there's an intention to sever a community for your own means, you're severing the spirit of that community. If you never address that, then how can you expect the spirit of the community to heal? And if the spirit of the community hasn't healed, then how will that impact the community members? How will that impact the visitors? How will that impact the newborns? And so what we see today because of this way that was made to make travel between the interstate a lot more convenient for a few, but at the expense of many.
Right. And it's like just trying to spread everything out and cater to,
because who would need the freeway the most? It wouldn't be those who actually live in the community.
It would be from people outside traveling through to get to where they need to go.
Just getting through. Yeah, it's a drive-through. It's a drive-through. It's a real-life drive-through.
Right, because these communities had everything they needed.
Yeah,
and then everything they needed just went away with the highway, and they're like, "Hey, use the highway to get where you need to go."
Yeah. Right. Fast car, fast food, drive-through.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So you've seen in your lifetime some newer public infrastructure transportation projects that have come about in St. Paul. Would you say that those have been more positive, or is it still falling back into this same pattern of not really listening to the community or taking into account actually what's best for the people who live here in Rondo?
I remember waking up and there was just this rally of artists that was like, we have to raise our voice against this green line that is coming through St. Paul. Yeah. It is coming and our voices do not matter up until this point. We're going to have to make our voices matter because they're not accounting for our voices and whether or not we want a green line to go through St. Paul.
So this is like a light rail right here.
Right,
It's a light rail.
it's like up the street.
Yeah,
It's
we
right
are
next to us.
It's on University Avenue and right here.
We're a block away from it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and it's there. And so I remember what university was like before the Green Line, and I remember what it was like during the Green Line, and it was devastating to see, because there's a lot of businesses that were FUBU, for us, by us, right? And they're just not there anymore. Right. You notice during the construction of the Green Line that businesses shut down. They had to shut down. They were forced to. And then you see these other businesses take their place.
That are not from the community.
And just like, where are you popping up at? Where are you coming from? Who gave you this grant to build this? Where happened to the candies? There's just certain things that were just the staple in the community. And you realize, oh, your people don't run this block anymore. Like you can see, oh, that's us. There was that's us feeling to the businesses that were up and down University, and now that's very few and far in between. And then you think about, okay, that transforming decades later into a couple decades later, that transforming into now these housing developments that are not for us, because if you take into account, on average, how much us makes compared to what the actual cost of living. Last time I checked, I think it was like $64,000.
The cost of living.
The cost of living in Minnesota to be comfortable.
Right.
And the average black family is making $32,000.
That's half.
Yes, less than, that's like half. Like we're making less than, we're at half of what is needed to live. So we're not living comfortable. Pretty much. We're just not, on average, we're not living comfortable. And so then you have these housing projects that we can't afford. So who are they for? Not us.
Right.
Yeah. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna push us out, but that raises the property value of the others around. So that goes up there. Those taxes go up. That mortgage goes up. That rent goes up. So then we get pushed out, and then you see this is how you gentrify the hood. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and they built a whole stadium for soccer.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention that because none of us go to that. I'm sorry. I don't even know who what's the soccer team name?
Minneapolis United?
The United?
United something? It's trying to be like Manchester United, but like Minneapolis United. It's not funny at all.
And they've been there for like, what, a couple years now?
Yeah.
I guess, right? Where's Foot Locker? That's my question. I remember Foot Locker and Dots. Where's Dots and Foot Locker? Right? We had a dollar store. We knew everything in there was $1.25, but still, that was our dollar store.
Yeah,
right? And we had we had a bowling alley right next. We had Foot Locker, Dots, Payless. Then we had the bowling alley right there. Then you could go to Cub Foods. You get your food. You can play ball. You can get some new shoes. And if you need a quick outfit, Dots got. Come on, bro. It's not there no more. Then there was. Dang, man. That was so long ago, bro. Yeah, we went. So yeah, it's
crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
To see the development. They kept the liquor store though.
Of course.
They just moved it down. They moved it from oh my God.
Of course they needed. Yeah. Of course they needed liquor.
Yeah,
of course.
So we had Perkins. So we had McDonald's and then we had Perkins. Perkins was the spot, right?
Yeah.
If the liquor store was like off in the corner somewhere, they shut down Perkins and moved the liquor store right across from McDonald's, right next to McDonald's.
Who needs food when you have alcohol?
Yeah, come on. Now. So, they made sure the liquor store didn't get touched during the riots. So Foot Locker got touched, and that's what I'm saying. That space now gets bought out by whoever owns a line. Who is it that owns that field? The stadium. I don't want to call nobody's name out. That and
I don't think we want to do that.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to name drop. I could. I'm feeling it, but they buy out that whole plot of land now is owned by them.
Right.
So it almost seemed like too intentional. All right, so let's talk conspiracy theory real quick.
Oh no!
Here we go. During the riots, was it really us destroying our own neighborhood?
Right. Nah, they be sending people in. Dude.
I mean, I was here I was high school for recording arts one of those nights, and night watch, whatever, and I watched what happened to Enterprise across the street. Yeah. It didn't look like we was doing that to Enterprise, right. And you notice that businesses and centers that had community investment, they didn't get touched.
Right.
The police were probably protecting them, right?
No. I said that I'll play this. The entities that had an investment in the community did not get touched.
Why is that?
I don't know why our school didn't get touched, except for that we have equity in the community. So there was that sense. On one hand, there was like, if you were actually, the community knew who you were less likely to get touched that night.
Oh, okay.
Right. But then there was this other random hand where it was just like a bunch of businesses that were just a part of the community. Just enterprise, just mess them over. Foot Locker, let's mess that. Boom, boom. I'm like, dude, what did it? They tried to get Target. They really couldn't. They couldn't get our Target. They got the Target down in Minneapolis. St. Paul Target wasn't going.
Yeah, that one.
So, I'm sorry. They were just on guard. After that was on guard. You're not walking out with a 55-inch on me, buddy. But yeah, it calls into question how much of that that damage, property damage, business damage, business displacement was started by us. Now, what we do know did happen often, that if the window was open, then anybody would go through.
Right. People even from like out of state, right? They would come in. Like agitators.
Yes, agitators. Like people breaking windows and they'd be spray painting free stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
and then if you already live in a community where you're struggling to make ends meet, and then there's a window open, there's no motivation to be a good Samaritan at this moment.
Yeah.
There's no motivation to be the good guy at this moment. No, I'm not going to take advantage of this free TV. There's no motivation. I'm sorry. We can have a moral compass all we want.
Right.
But for the young people, there was no motivation for that if you're already strapped for making ends meet. But the reality was it us that broke the window though?
Right.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So.
Yeah. So you said you were like a part of that group of like artists and activists and people who was really out there from the beginning, who knew like what the green line could cause and what not considering, like what do you think could have been done differently? Do you think there should not have been a green line at all? Or do you think public transportation has a place in our cities? Do you think, the community's voice obviously seems important, right?
Yeah. Public transportation definitely has a place, but you have to include the public's voice.
Right.
How do they want to commute? What's the best way to commute? Like, what's the middle ground without driving through the middle of our city first? Like, figure out what's our middle ground. Like, okay, the goal is to do what with this public transportation? You want to connect cities on a faster route? I get that. Okay, cool. How then can we make this work for everybody so the local businesses are not displaced? Those that can't afford to come back from the deconstruction you just did. You just deconstructed the entire University Avenue, and there are going to be some businesses that will not have enough equity to recover from that. Mm-hmm. What measures have you put in place to help us recover? Because that's the whole point. It's the recovery. If you deconstruct on such a level where we can't recover, then that deconstruction is not good for us, no matter what you're trying to build. And so I just think that's where the conversation starts is, one, what does the public actually need? Who is this actually for? If it's just to pass through to get to somewhere else, then is it really for us? No.
Right, because they advocate for that video we said, it's gonna make things better.
Yeah.
That when they're advocating for that line, it's it's gonna make things better, but did it really?
Right. They're telling the community what's good rather than listening, kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. So that's so I'm saying, so I don't. Yeah, man. Without the community voice, nothing good can come out of something that you tell a person, you need this. Did you ask me if I need this? So yeah, I'd say include a community voice first and foremost. And then the community will let you know what's the best way to go about getting to if we need it.
So with the discussion of urban renewal, this brings us to the city we're going to talk about from the Bloomberg article, which there's a lot of urban renewal happened in Detroit. So, Rafi?
Yeah. So there was, very similar to Rondo, this thriving African-American neighborhood in Detroit. It was in Black Bottom neighborhood, and there was Paradise Valley, which was the commerce business section. And then, as you can imagine, there were two highways actually that were kind of plowed right down through downtown Detroit.
I got 2 for 1.
Yeah.
I-35
exactly.
and I-37.5.
375, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so these neighborhoods are no longer, they don't exist. They couldn't rebuild. And it's just across the country. It's again and again and again, right? And so it's just so hard to recover from that. And this Black Bottom neighborhood in Paradise Valley, they were like centers for like Black excellence. They were places for jazz and other musicians and for community leaders. You know, there were so many great people who came out of that neighborhood and who were influenced and who'd lived there, and then they just sent it through.
I'm pretty sure one of them was Ralph Bunchy. He was like a UN official. He was the first of African descent to win a Nobel Peace Prize. And there's Della Reese, a vocal singer.
Yeah,
it had a lot of music in that city, and it was also dubbed the Black Wall Street of Detroit or of Michigan.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
right.
So a lot of money was being made there by the Black community.
Yeah, it was prosperous.
There seems to be this connection with like Black communities becoming self-sufficient, and the government saying,
Yeah, it's just
it seems like
coincidence.
Maybe I don't know. Conspiracy?
I don't think
it might be conspiracy.
Yeah, it's just a fluke.
Yeah.
You know.
Did they name those highways too?
Oh no, it's just I-375. What are they gonna name it? Malcolm X Expressway.
You know what?
He is from Detroit.
He is.
Yeah,
that's
an idea.
Little Express.
That makes it better.
Little Express.
Yeah. Little Express. All right, so we interviewed, like we mentioned earlier, a person from Detroit who now lives in Rondo.
He works in Rondo. He lives in Minneapolis, but but he's very much in the community.
He's your jazz teacher.
Yeah, he teaches jazz at Walker West Academy of Music, which is right on Selby. I work with him, and he, tells all these stories about both like what it was like in Detroit and coming to Rondo and learning about the devastation of these highways. And so Kevin Washington is who we talked to a couple weeks ago, and he has this perspective of being in both of these places. And so, let's play that interview. So we are the Youth Council of Reconnect Rondo, and we're basically trying to, bring people together and, learn ourselves about the history of this community and, teach other people about, the impact that the I-94 highway had, cutting straight through Rondo and, kind of devastating the Rondo neighborhood and community, which was like so vibrant. And, you are teaching here in Rondo, and you've been in a lot of places in the U.S., and you've seen some of these same things with where maybe how highways have affected communities and other ways that like the government has kind of come in and disrupted these like Black communities. So I guess we could start by, you just telling us in general like a little bit about like who you are, where you're from, how'd you get here, how'd you get to Rondo, how'd you get to where you're living now and what you're doing?
So originally I am from Detroit, Michigan. Came to Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Yeah, I said it that way. 1987. It's like 12, 13 years old, something like that. My first grade here was 7th grade.
Oh, okay.
How did I get to the Rondo neighborhood? Now, what's funny is I've never lived in St. Paul, but I've always been a part of the Rondo neighborhood because I'm teaching, and I'm an educator at Walker West Academy of Music. When I first moved here, that's where I started taking piano lessons. And my parents met some people. They pointed their finger to St. Paul. I quickly began to see the difference between St. Paul and Minneapolis and asked my parents why we didn't move to St. Paul. Yeah. Because this Rondo neighborhood, the people reminded me of the people in Detroit.
Mm-hmm. How so?
A proudness, togetherness, neighborhood, strong, educated. You can feel it. Every Black person I met from St. Paul, it was just something different. I'm not trying to disrespect Minneapolis. It's just, it was a mindset that I related to right away. Mm-hmm. And I find if you talk to other people that is not from here, a lot of people say the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I still haven't lived in St. Paul. My twin daughters live in St. Paul. They beat me. The closest I lived to St. Paul was New Brighton. Technically, that's a St. Paul suburb, but it don't count. No, it doesn't count.
It's not Rondo.
But I've been a part of Walker West, and like I said, I've always felt something in that neighborhood on Selby, you know. And
Yeah.
I just love working at Walker West.
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah, Walker West is like a jazz and just in music in general.
No, it's not just jazz.
Right.
It's everything. It's gospel. It is jazz. It is classical.
Yeah.
They're teaching you everything there. I mean, we have 3-string educators there. And one of them, the main is Ross. His students are just going to the youth orchestras, you know. And no, he is an excellent teacher. Matter of fact, he's not the only one. There's a lot of excellent teachers at this school, piano teachers. It's a lot of new people.
Yeah.
You know, we've hired a lot of new people lately. We're moving to Marshall right off Dale. Like soon, like next year. And I can't wait. We got the Wilder building. Still working out some details, you know. That's how I got to the Rondo neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, other schools have been trying to get me over there, but I want to be in the community.
Do you think like the teachers at Walker West and like the way people teach and the way you teach, do you think you like think about history when you're teaching and you think about like the community, and it's not just about like just learning the music specifically, but also learning the history of the music maybe, or at least learning how it like affects the community or interacts with that community in some way?
I'm going to take you for an example. Well, this is how we do in class. We teach you the music. But then what do? Then we start talking about the history, why it's being played this way, where it used to be played. And then, yes, we talk about the history of the Rondo neighborhood, which I knew nothing about until I moved here. And then, you know, you go to these functions, you learn more and more about how important the Rondo neighborhood is. And then you realize, like, oh, they did that to that city and this city too. Oh, I didn't know that until I found out about the story of 94 here.
How do you learn about that? Did you learn immediately when you got here, or like when you started teaching?
About 4 or 5 years after I moved here, I found out about the other cities.
Okay.
You know, and then my mother, I don't know, my mother had never talked about it, but my mother mentioned it. She's like, it's the same dang thing they did in Detroit. You know, my mother was born and raised in Detroit.
Yeah.
And so you had Davison Highway there. That was a influential black middle-class neighborhood, just like Rondo.
Right.
And if you don't know anything about Detroit, it's one of the blackest cities in America. And found out they put Davison Highway through that neighborhood. But then I found out something new.
Oh, yeah?
They also did that to 75. So 75 is also a highway.
Right. That's near the Davison Highway, right?
Kind of. Yeah, they did that to 75. Same thing. Didn't know that. I just found that out recently.
Was that like the Paradise Valley neighborhood kind of around there? Or I don't know what the name of it, but I think I know what you're talking about.
No, Paradise was somewhere else. We might be talking about Miami, because they did it to Miami. Also, Miami, Tennessee, Kansas City, Philadelphia, LA, Oakland, Dallas, Houston.
All the cities.
Yeah, all the cities, Atlanta. And so you as a black American, when you see this, and when I hear people say stupid stuff, racism is over. Really? We're going to do this? we're going to do this? And then they're like, why is black people so angry? Slavery is over. Really? You're that stupid when it still goes on, blatant. Then when you sit back and think about it over and over, and you find out about the other cities over, that's just blatant disrespectful and jealousy. Do y'all know about Black Wall Street?
Yep.
Same thing.
In Tulsa?
Not just Tulsa.
Yeah.
Tulsa was just one of them.
Yeah.
You know, you had Florida, you had Virginia, all over the place where black people had their own doctors, stores. Oh, black people don't ever own anything. Black people are lazy. They don't want to work. Y'all keep burning it down.
Yeah.
Leave us alone and let us be us. Like people from Detroit. I just had a conversation with a friend from Detroit, just recent, how we were the last, we call us the last great generation of Detroit, the last musical generation of Detroit, where we just thought white people own stuff, Asian people own stuff, Arabs own stuff, black people. It was just normal. Every culture owns things. I didn't know it was a big deal to own, let me rephrase, let me go backwards. I didn't know it was a big deal for a black person to own a bank until I left Detroit. Mm-hmm. Did not know that. There is I can't remember the name of it, but there is a black-owned bank in Detroit. And that bank is now in Minneapolis, I think. I think it's open. I just can't remember the name of it. My parents used to be a part of that bank. And so it wasn't a big deal to us. With Detroit, you saw every society of black people. Like when Obama was in office, people were like, oh my God, I've never seen a black person like that. I'm like, that's just regular to me.
So that was the Kevin Washington interview. And by the way, there's way more. I think we're going to release the full video somewhere.
Yeah, like an hour or so.
Yeah, it's an hour. It's a long time. Great interview. We talked about many things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Black Bottom neighborhood was, it was thriving, had like 300 businesses. But before that, it was mostly an immigrant community made of like Eastern Europeans and Jews. The Great Migration and redlining, caused it to be a majority black neighborhood.
And I think Rondo has a similar kind of history with that, starting in the very early 1900s and like late 1800s, was like a majority like Jewish and Eastern European neighborhood. And then, like Moises said, very similar story with the Great Migration. This became kind of this black center for culture and business. Right. And so Detroit has a similar story. And then, of course, the end result in Detroit was devastating with the highway.
Like these highways were being built, right? And then urban renewal happened. And by the way, the mayors of Detroit, they were for urban renewal. They were 100% for it.
Right? How are we defining urban renewal?
Right.
Because I want to define it just a little bit differently. How are we defining urban renewal?
Like
taking something like you have an urban area, right? And then like you just build. Like you build new things there, but like that doesn't
like what the video kind of we watched showed. Like
building
they
new
were
apartments.
Portraying this like as the epitome of like progress, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So like everything was getting better and more modern. They were building new huge buildings. Everything was getting faster. Transportation. Right. But and it was like though all centered around this idea of like
making the urban centers better.
Right, but really what it did is turned it into like a suburban urban sprawl kind of.
And
so like they call it renewal, but it's really destruction.
And it displaced thousands of people in Detroit. And the mayors, they were for it. The mayor at the time of the highway and like all this, he opposed all public housing projects and all but 4 sites. Can you guys guess who lived in those 4 sites?
I wonder.
BIPOC communities lived in that. So he approved those, but not the other ones where it was in the suburbs and all that. So
so he proved it with the BIPOC stay.
Yeah.
But then with the other ones, he
didn't want it, And it was backed by the real estate interests. They were for that. Because, they wanted to protect their
interest.
Their interest. So, but they didn't care about the 4 sides. They're like,
those 4 sides?
Yeah, those are hazardous. That's what they deemed it as.
Wow, yeah. We need to renew those.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question here arises, where do we go from this? What do we do? Like, how do these communities move forward? What can be done? And I think there are things that can be done. Like here in Rondo, in Detroit, it did suffer. But there is a plan to kind of fill in this entire highway and replace it with
a boulevard.
Now, what they mean by a boulevard is like a 4 to 6 lane like road.
Yeah, with like shops on either
so
side.
It's
and
like a
houses.
little bit better.
I mean, there's something there. You know.
It's not a walkable city.
It's a question of who will own those businesses, right?
Right.
And will it be community oriented? Yeah, I think it's like a 30-acre stretch of the highway. It's not the full highway, of course. Like they wouldn't do that.
Right.
But yeah, it's like $100 million project.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a big project, and it's, I guess, a start. At least people are becoming more aware and thinking in the right way about this.
There are some people in the Black Bond community who want to get rid of these highways, you know, in total, like just get rid of them, and you know, refill that space with, you know, what was there.
And this is there is a national push, I think, to rethink the kind of way that our cities have been structured since World War II, since these highways, since the suburbanization, like urban sprawl. There's this movement called like new urbanism, which we've talked a bit about before, and it's trying to make cities more like mixed use, like businesses and residential.
Walkable.
Yeah, working together, like you can...
Eco-friendly.
Yeah, so like a lot of the stuff that you need or want or in your community can be very close by. Bikes are great, walking is great. And now, you know, this is, I think, an important step in the right direction. I guess the issue when it comes to new urbanism specifically is that it's just not really focused on
the racial disparities.
Yeah, exactly. It's just about decontextualizing the history, kind of. It's not talking about the history of racism and of redlining and of the destruction of like communities of color.
Like when they're like advocating for, you know, the removal of highways, because that's what the people, some people in urbanism advocate for. They don't really talk about what's going to go there like after they're removed. Like, is it going to be community oriented, or is it just going to be like big businesses taking up the now boulevards and now streets? They don't really talk about that. Right. That's like a concern. It's a big concern.
They released a report, I think, in 2019, which highlighted like 10 highways.
Yeah.
Some in Texas, some in New York, and there was one in the Treme neighborhood of New Orleans, which plowed through a black.
We may talk about that in another podcast.
Yes, teaser for the next episode, or one of them to come. The Treme neighborhood was also similar to Rondo and Black Bottom in Detroit, and so this was one of the highways discussed in the project, in the report by the Congress for New Urbanism, and so there is some effort to rethink these highways. Like Moses said, maybe completely eliminate them because of the devastating impacts they've had. Yeah, like what
will go there after they're eliminated?
Yeah,
like it has to be for the community. It can't be just be like big businesses sweeping in and taking up all that space. Because like, oh, new space, I'll go in and invest. Yeah, you know, it has to be. You can't be like that.
Yeah, I heard this quote recently.
Oh yeah,
and the quote went something like, "What's about us without us isn't for us."
Yeah, like, that's a great quote.
Powerful quote.
Yeah, like, I wonder who said that.
Right, bro. Yeah. Like, I just heard it. Like,
just, like before we were recording. Yeah,
like someone in this room, maybe.
Like maybe. Like I wish. Yeah. But the truth of that quote is like so loud when you actually consider what has been done to the community already and the impact it has on the community versus like the future and where we should go and hopes to go. If you don't include the voice of the community, then what you're doing is not for the community.
Exactly.
Right?
Period.
And that's just it. So you don't complain about the youth if you built a stadium instead of a community center.
Right.
I don't want to hear nothing about what's going on with the youth. I don't want to hear nothing about how bad something is if you took away our library but kept the liquor store. I don't want to hear it. Because if you actually want to see change, right, you will not remove the mechanisms of change and replace them with entertainment for that is geared towards everyone but those that actually live in the community.
Right. Mechanisms of like reinforcement of the, oppressive status quo.
Yeah, bro. Like, come on, bro. Like, are you serious? So, yeah, that's where I'm at with whatever is of the future for Rondo. It has to include Rondo. It's not Rondo's future. Yeah. It's somebody else's future for that land, that plot of land that they have no stake in. So don't say this is for Rondo if you haven't included the voice of Rondo. Don't say it, right?
Right.
Keep it as nameless as Has 94.
Yeah, yeah. Don't name after a famous figure.
Right. Don't even attempt to. But if you want something that is of Rondo and for Rondo, you must include Rondo.
Yeah.
So that's just my prayer. My prayer is like with these plans that we know are decades in the making. We know 30 years ago we are living like 30 years ago plans were made that we are living out today. That's how they plot these plans out for the community. Mm-hmm. They're not, let's think about today. Let's think about what the next 30 years look like. And then start today is a byproduct of 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. Right? So just as 30 years ago be a byproduct of today, but that there's already a motion for the development of our communities. The question is that motion for us, mm-hmm. or is it to displace us? Right? Is it for us or is it against us? Is it for our progress or is it for our continual suppression and then ejection so that somebody else can come in due to election? Right? We got to be at the table. Yeah. When these conversations are happening. And we have to talk about the conversations that already have happened. So like I said, I'm all for talking about today, the next 30 years, but we can't overlook that 30 years has already been accounted for before today. That we're living out something that was already accounted for. We have to get to the table and discuss, okay, what's already in the plans? Because if it didn't include my voice when this was first put in the plans, then it needs to right now. Maybe we need to put a freeway through your plans before you put a freeway through our community again, mm-hmm. metaphorically speaking. Before you create something that is for your betterment, right? That is for your bag, but our bad at the end of the day. And so that's my hope, is that our voices get to the table, our voices get to the table, and that there's transparency about what the actual plan is for Rondo, for St. Paul, for the greater metro area. Like, what's the actual plan here, people? Like, you guys know what the actual plan is.
Right.
You can't play us. Like, so don't. When we get to the table, don't act like we're part of something new you're creating. No, there's already a progress in place. There's already a plan in place. Let's talk about that specific plan and see what needs to be deconstructed so that our voices can be included, so that our community can thrive, so that the young people can have more access to the resources they need for their succession, not their dejection. So, yeah, man.
So, and you probably already answered this in that, great rant.
Sorry, no, just trying to upset the system.
Yeah, of course. That's what we're here to do that. But what does progress look like? Does it look like the Rondo land bridge? Does it look like what new urbanism is looking for? What does it look like?
It looks like a young person knowing, because I graduated from this high school, Harvard's looking at me. There's a stigma that our books aren't as good, right? Okay, so it looks like our books being better than, mm-hmm. so that they look for graduates from the high school that I go to in my hood. Mm-hmm. That's what progress looks like. It looks like there's real equity here, that I'm proud to say I am from here, because being from here means something to those out. You're from St. Paul? You're from Rondo? Oh, you went to Central? Oh, you went to high school for recording arts? Oh, you went to Arlington? Oh, or wow. Okay, tell me more. Okay. Those schools are on the top of the top. Like, their education is booming over there. They're doing creative things over there. They're, wow, okay.
Like, the community's strong over there.
The community's strong over there. That's, okay, we're glad to have you because you're from there.
Right.
That's when we know we're making progress. When we show up, people find out we're from here, and they're glad to have us at the table. They want to know what we have to say because they value where we are from and what we represent. For me, that's what progress looks like. So if the community center that they're hoping to build is a part of that, is going to bring equity, I'm all for it. Mm-hmm. But if it's not, don't build that community center.
Or the land bridge you're talking about.
Or the land, just in general.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever is being built. So the land bridge, the community center, I don't care what is being built. If it's not being built with the idea of bringing honor back, equity back to this specific neighborhood, then it does not need to be built. Something else needs to fill that space. How youth think about themselves in the future does matter. So if the youth can't see themselves as a successful person because of where they came from, if the youth feels like I gotta move to become successful, then we're not doing the right thing where we're at.
So yeah, that was a great rant, by the way. I 100% agree with you that the community, people from the community need to be proud, and that right now they took that away. Like other places offer more, and like that's how communities vanish. But yeah,
I mean, and I think one of the goals of Reconnect Rondo here in the Rondo neighborhood is to center the community, as the main voice.
Yeah, that's the vision.
Not go through the government, not go through an outside source. The goal is for it to be grounded in what the community wants. And so, I think that, like you said, that seems super important. And going forward, that's what we hope to see. So thank you so much for coming. And this was great. I mean, I think we learned a lot and we really got to the heart of what is important.
Yeah, you're a great guest host, man.
We're going to have to have you back at some point.
Yeah,
So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And, you all those listening can check us out at reconnectrondo.com and listen to our previous podcasts if you haven't already. And, tune in next time. Thank you so much, Pierre and Moises, and we'll see you soon.
Word. Power to the people until we're all equal.
Thank you for watching our podcast. If you like what you see, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get notified when we put out new podcast episodes.